So I say let's go ahead and get started. So we've still got a few folks piling in here. This is great. And we had almost 720 people sign up, which is just crazy for a webinar about an annual report. So Matt and I are really excited to take you all through this. Matt has been an amazing Sherlock Holmes, combing through, finding all the insights. Again, keep dropping in. I see the chat starting to heat up here. Lots of folks networking, which is great. Feel free, if you have any questions, feel free, you can start to drop some of those in the Q&A as they come up. But yeah, without further ado, I'd say let's get cranking here.
Do this.
So for many of you, you probably know me, you probably know Matt. You came in, you probably learned about this from one of us. I'm Jake Dunlap. I'm the CEO of Scaled. We are a sales consulting and strategy firm. We specialize in working with a mix of growth stage companies that are trying to build out either initial or later stage processes, and larger organizations that are trying to modernize. So if your organization is in the process of any change management around lead generation, sales process, or sales excellence in general, you can reach out to us. So Mr. Cameron.
That's me. Yeah, I even look a little bit like the picture. I've just got a little more blind with the old age. I got up at that thing. Yeah. So I'm the CEO and founder of SaaSy Sales Leadership, and what we do is we have public and private training courses for the go-to-market leadership functions in SaaS companies. But what we'll also be sharing with you at the end of today is the fact that we're doing a few individual contributor focused courses, like we're doing one on writing winning proposals, which has a lot to do with what we're talking about today.
I love it. Yes. So we've got some different cool stuff that we're both doing on the heels of this. So stay tuned, stay focused. You're going to get some really great insights. So just what to expect. So Matt's going to break down all the hard work that he did. Matt really does all the hard work. I just kind of show up, is really how it works. But Matt did an amazing job of kind of combing through not just Home Depots, but also thinking about their competitive landscape and how to think about how those two things juxtapose to create interesting insights that might matter. And then I'm going to break down how to take some of those insights and turn them into an action plan, independent of what type of product you have. I think one of the things that I'll try to talk about is just how you can really take a key initiative and make it applicable in a lot of different places. So it should be a great time, some great insights. And then, like I said, we'll do some Q&A. All right.
All right, let's kick off. So for those of you who were with us last time, Jake, can you build this full slide for me that I can just jump through here? So here's the deal. When we're looking at enterprise accounts, we need to take into consideration the upside down pyramid here, the external factors that are impacting corporate strategy and decision making that then funnel down to departmental purchasing. So we're not going to focus on departmental because I want to be relevant to all of you today. The purpose of using Home Depot is really as an example of how you would break down any publicly listed company. On the right-hand side are all the elements that make up the top of the pyramid, which is the inverse base. The big ones that I found in Home Depot were industry trends and global cost as drivers for their strategy. And so with that sort of lens, let's dive into what I found out about them. So for context, I found this information by listening to and reviewing their latest earnings release. That's all available to all of you for any public listed company in North America and around the world. It's a treasure trove of information, and it doesn't take a postgrad in finance to understand it. There's a lot of plain English stuff in there that you can get really good insights out of. So what do they say? And remember this, an earnings release is basically a press release, a PR, right? They put their spin on it for investors. So you've got to kind of look behind the curtains or look for the subtext to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to share that with you. And one of the themes I want to leave with you, or seed I want to plant with you right now, is when thinking about these sorts of organizations, oftentimes it's very valuable to think about them as the customer and their customers. So it's the customer's customer. For what are they doing to serve their customer base can be a very, very insightful thing to look at. So what do they highlight? What do they want us to be looking at? They want to look at, on the left-hand side, I put a little blue square there around the fact they've got 83% year-on-year growth in digital sales. And then just below that on the right, they've got pretty good growth in do-it-yourself and pro customers. Just so we all understand, for those of you who may not know, Home Depot, of course, provides construction and repair supplies. Most of us would know the brand. They have a large chunk of professional contracting customers, right? And so they say they couldn't be happier with their online business and how their digital assets are performing. And so I had a little look at that. 13% of their sales are made online, which is actually in line with what the Fed says overall the retail category is doing. Their overall retail is about 14%. So you could kind of throw a blanket over it, right? So they're doing pretty well. Their site visits are up dramatically in mobile, desktop, and web. And something that I found quite interesting is that their conversion is up, even though they had hyper growth in app and mobile web. For those of you in digital, you know that app and mobile web typically doesn't convert as highly as desktop. So that's cool. They found out that their professionals, the pros, are highly engaged, and that they say that their B2B website is seeing record volumes and engagement. So in theory, all is rosy. So let's look beyond that. The other thing I was looking at was what the execs are excited to talk about in terms of this business of year-on-year growth. They say 20% year-on-year growth if they compare the comps. What are the comps, Jake? I know you're wondering. We've talked about that. The comps are the comparables, like for like stores. So if you take a store that's the same format square footage, you compare it to other ones. And so those comparables are seeing a 20% year-on-year growth, which is pretty cool. Good time to point something out. If you're talking to a vertical industry, like a retailer or healthcare or something like that, you have to learn the lingo, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise you sound like an idiot, right, Jake?
Absolutely. Or you might think comps is the competition, or exactly, as opposed to store year over year or period over period. And I think real quick, Matt, how, you think about some of these insights, and I know you've got more here. How long do you think you spent? If you think about from listening to the call, going through the report itself, like how long do you think you spent to start to pull some of these details out?
I'm being pretty consistent. Whenever I look at a public company like this, I'm pretty thorough. So, I would estimate, give or take, 4 hours is what it's going to take me to get some stuff I can really bite off on. And then, of course, when you get these high-level insights, then you're going to bring the team together and brainstorm, right? You summarize, as I'm doing today, as Jake's going to do, you summarize what we've done, and then start throwing stuff at the wall and see what you think you want to go after. You and I did that, right, Jake? So sort of what you're going to share with is basically what would be the drilling down. Like after you've got the insight, what are we going to do about it?
And that's such a spot on. I think just for a lot of people listening, just to think about it, look, you're going after larger companies, and the process to penetrate these companies takes time. So, you're talking about investing, 4 hours for the research, and then another, let's call it 10 hours or so fully loaded to set a strategy for a year. And I think what I see, and I don't know about you, Matt, is that people, they kind of skip over, maybe they find one thing and then they launch into a strategy. You know what I mean? They launch into what they think is a strategy, as opposed to really plotting a course here. And I think, hopefully what you'll see is how to do some of that. And how to plot a course, because I think that's such an important piece for people, because these are big initiatives that take years sometimes to see fruition.
100%. And something you and I have talked about is, I actually did a podcast recently with a guy who was explaining a very common thing I see, which is that if you're selling a specific product, you go and sell it to the person who has the job to be done, right? So the person who you think will have the budget, and you go talk about that. And, we talked about the fact that oftentimes you can't sell a 50K solution or a 30K solution. Like, you just keep bouncing off the walls. But if you elevate your thinking, as we're doing today, and we'll show you, to the top, you can sell a $5 million deal, depending on what you guys are solving for, right? But it's interesting to me that we think, well, we can't think that big. That'll be a hard thing to do. But oftentimes, much easier to sell $1 million than it is a few 30, 40, 50K deals. You'll see why. Yeah. So just to finish off on this slide, if you want to, what would I do if I was selling to retailers? Just Google retailer-specific terminology. No shit. Like, seriously, you'll find that, and they'll go,
I know.
That's what it means, right? It helps. So
I love that.
Everything's looking rosy, right, at the moment. So this is the PR stuff until you have a look at how they compare to their peers, right? So their number one competitor is Lowe's, right? And Not all the companies have capitalized on the pandemic equally. So for home improvements, there was a total boom, right? People are stuck at home. Some people have time on their hands, or they just want to feel like they're making progress, so they do stuff around the home. And as you can see here, Lowe's had consistently stronger growth rates, right? Now, what does that mean? It means they took market share away from Home Depot. So over the last 4 quarters, that's a big deal. So on average, Lowe's growth rate was 26%, which is nearly 6% more than Home Depot. And at the numbers we're talking, that's a lot of money. And I had a deeper look. So in addition to the numerical evidence, I looked at Lowe's report, and they made the comment in a press release, right? They came after it, that they expect to drive further market share gains in 21. So what does that mean? It's implying that in 20, they felt that they picked up market share. Now, we all know that that's going to have Home Depot's attention, right? And why are they confident? So their outperformance was around 75% of their sales was generated from do-it-yourself customers, right? And I couldn't find the exact numbers for Home Depot, but it's pretty well understood that Home Depot skews more towards professionals and contractors than Lowe's. And so that ratio works in Lowe's favor because the home consumer stuff are the ones that really spiked up. And also Lowe's had this new total home strategy that's paying off dividends. It's about enhancing the digital channels, right? Installation services and growing its professional business as they expand its supply chain. So what Jake's showing you here is that Home Depot has built a sort of a pro contractor app that they hope will make life easier. So not only is Lowe's doing well because they've got the DIY space, but Home Depot's been investing in the other side of it, which is the pro and contractor stuff, but possibly not sufficiently. So you can see here on the right-hand side, they've got this create a quote thing, right? So it's an inbuilt quote creation system for the contractor. So when they're ordering lumber or whatever else, they can do it through this portal. It locks them into Home Depot, right? And they can issue invoices out of it, which is cool. But they're definitely playing catch up with Lowe's on the procurement front. Because if you look at the left-hand side, go back a bit, Jake. If you look at the left-hand side, the red there, you can see that they've got a sync to QuickBooks. Well, what size of company uses QuickBooks? There's actually a ceiling on that, right? If you want to go after the really big contractors, have a look now at what Lowe's is doing. They've got an online procurement system that's integrated with SAP's Ariba, Coupa, and other systems, which talks to the fact that they're dealing with potentially much larger professional contracting groups, and it's much stickier when you integrate those supply chains. So the question I was asking myself was, what is Home Depot focusing on? Are they sitting on their hands? What are they doing? But it turns out they were probably distracted because there was an adjacency that I found out about that they're working on. In December, they completed the acquisition of HD Supply Solutions, which, no coincidence with the name, long story short, they used to own this company, they bought it back. And what the HD Supplies does is they have all the things you need for maintenance, repair, and operations, MRO, for hospitality, commercial properties, healthcare, and government facilities, which is pretty interesting because you think during a pandemic, they were kind of emptied out. Now, Bank of America is pretty excited about this strategy, right, for Home Depot, because they think that they could add another 4 or 5% in top line growth this year, right, because of the reopening of all the commercial properties. I mean, think about it, all the offices are shut, right? So there's not enough maintenance repairs going on. So Home Depot is going to need to provide a frictionless experience for those customers as well. But it tells us that the exec are probably distracted from the pro category as they try and bring in this acquisition, integrate it, and make it profitable. So let's have a look at the factors that matter. I said at the start that there's these external factors, right? So competition, Lowe's are making aggressive moves, which I'll discuss more in a minute. Lumber costs have gone up, so the margins are going down. Supply chain, a lot of supply chain interruptions, which means that they've really needed to optimize distribution. There's having the right product in the right place, all that good stuff. At a corporate level, as I said, they're focusing on this MRO category as it's going to come back online in the second half of this year. And then very importantly, customer behavior. So there's this big spike in home projects that I talked about. And it's interesting, neither Lowe's nor Home Depot are giving any financial guidance for this year because there are just too many unknowns. So with all that, what are the insights? What's the insight? What would I do? I would use a flanking strategy, which is where we change the rules of the game. So traditionally, suppliers of materials or components really compete on price and availability, right? You imagine you've got your contractor, they need some materials on the job, and it's price and availability, right? But at some point, you can't differentiate here. So the idea is to start competing in a place that has value to their customers, which is the professional contractor, and that the competition are underinvested in. And so in this case, I'm talking about a whole of business process solution that'll make life easier for the contractor. So thinking of the customer's customer, what do they want? They want low price, availability, and less paperwork and hassle. So the big idea is, why not become a full business partner to them, the contractor, and provide them with a portal that provides everything they would need? And the question is there precedent for that? Yes, there is. And this is what Jake's showing you here in telco, right? So not only would a really good portal defend against Lowe's attack, but it will also increase revenue lock-in for the MRO business. So what would it have? It would definitely have apps that the pros need to run their business, like workforce management, bookkeeping, you name it. Many people on this call, you're thinking, yeah, we do a silo of that. Absolutely. And if I did a silo of this, I wouldn't come in and sell my silo product. I would come in with a trusted advisor style consultative hat on and say, here's the opportunity for you to build a place for your contractors to go where all their questions are answered, right? Apps is easy, but what about this? What about a free online set of resources to train pros how to build and manage a profitable contractor business? So I'm thinking like Udemy or Coursera for contractors, 100% Home Depot branded, which, Jake, don't you think, would be funded by suppliers, right?
Absolutely.
Of course they would. If I'm doing a training thing on, how to get additional margin in your business, don't you think QuickBooks or any of these accounting packages, they'll pay for that, right? Because they want to be in front, they want to be the example that's being used. So for those of you who are actually interested in selling to Home Depot, what could you sell to them? Number one, I think, is digital transformation strategy services. Of course, apps, anything that a professional contractor could use. Digital infrastructure, so authentication, cybersecurity, e-learning, anything related to the effort of creating a secure and efficient port for connecting to services. And of course, potentially, third-party billing systems. So there you go. To summarize, what we've learned is they're losing market share to Lowe's. They're not saying that. It's in the category of the professional contractor. So thinking about the customer's customer, how do we defend the pros that they have today and lock them in, and then of course be attractive to other pros? That's my idea. And at this point, I want to throw to Jake and say, well, how would we do that?
So much goodness, right? And I think, we're going to talk through a lot of different questions or, details here. We've got some questions starting to come in the Q&A, which is great. One of the questions before I jump in, Matt, I think is a good one. Anything you threw away? So like, when you think about some of the insights, right? So you're kind of picking through and then maybe you kind of, for me, it's like, I'll latch onto something and then I'll realize like, there's no real meat here. Right. And then I'll let it go. Is there anything that stood out to you that you looked at, or how you even think about the process of finding it and like maybe the pattern that you look for to know this is a thing, but not really a thing?
Yeah, anything that they say that they've successfully implemented, for example, like when we looked at the Tractor Supply Company, they talked about their success in multi-channel, omni-channel and stuff like that. That horse is bolted, right? Anything that they're talking about has already been budgeted, funded, and is gone. And if you come in, you're late to the party. So I ignore that. I think about the implications of it. So what would be next?
Think about that real quick, Matt. I just want to interrupt you. Let everyone write down what he just said. If they are talking about an initiative, the ship has sailed. Not that there might be an opportunity for you to, come in as an ancillary. I really think that it's a critical point, Matt, that I think 90% of reps see an initiative when they read an annual report and they're like, oh, I can help with that. It's like, No. That was 9 months ago.
Yeah. And you know what we know that, Jake, is because if I'm putting it in the annual report or earnings release, I'm telling my competition.
Exactly.
So they're not going to tell Lowe's what they're doing before they do it. It's done. It's like too late to catch up. So the other thing I would say is, what are they not saying? What are they not talking about? And that's why I always look at their competition. Always. And I do the comparable. And that's what we found with Lowe's. I would never have known that actually, because if you just read their results, everything's rosy, but it's not, right? There's opportunity. And I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. They're probably doing a fine job. But as consultative salespeople, we need to find the gaps.
I love that, right? And that's it. And I think what you just said there is like, when you look at the competition, especially this, where there's like two behemoths, right? So it's a very easy kind of proxy. But then again, we did Tractor Supply Company, and they've been nipping too, right? They've been coming in and starting to take market share too from in this whole category. So I think it's such a critical call out. Like, again, just doing a little bit of research. And like Matt said, he spent, roughly about 4 hours between all of this, just, looking at Home Depot, starting to connect some dots. Another question someone asked before I move on here is, Frederick, great question here. Again, everyone, please start dropping your questions. Be selfish. Tell us what industry you're in. Tell us what product you sell, and we'll try to think about how we can make it applicable given some of these trends. But he asked he didn't say outside of Google, but I'll say outside of Google. So outside of Google, is there anything around, for understanding trends, any, go-to spots or, ways that you think about identifying the trends?
Yes. So depending on the vertical that you're going after, they always have websites that might be analyst focused, or for example, there's retail journals, right? I'm all over them. So when I was selling to fintech, I was subscribing to all the same journals online that my prospective customers were, and I'm reading about them, because then you get some unfiltered insight about what's going on behind the scenes. Right? So I definitely do that. And then if you really want to get fancy about it, and you have a financial bent, then you'll subscribe to some of the financial analysts services. So what I used to do, and what you can do today, is actually pay. It'll cost you, $4,500, $5,000 a year for a single license to get one of these services like Finlistic or Sentio that actually allows you to do exactly what a hedge fund manager would do, to analyze and compare side by side all these people, and it will dramatically speed up your research, because they do natural language processing and allow you to see the core themes. So if you're selling really good stuff,
Matt, you said
SENTIEO.com is one of them, and that's very much fund oriented, but I mean, that's a tool I use. And then there's another one called Finlistics, Finlistics. They'll try and sell you services too, but they they have a more salesy focused and insight driven product. I'm not advocating for either of them. I'm just making you aware of them.
Yeah. No, well, I think it's a good call out, right? Especially if you've got an enterprise org. It's, that's step one. And then step two is what we're going to get into, which is, what do you actually do with it? So again, everyone, keep the questions coming. John, I see you hopped in here in the Q&A. I'm going to answer part of that, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt as we get through it. So a couple of things I want to call out so step one is what Matt said, which is doing the work to plot the course forward. And I want all of you to think about this, where, I use the example of north versus 3 degrees northwest. And the difference between north and 3 degrees northwest, when you walk out 10 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, becomes gigantic. And when you don't invest the time to do the research, to put in the strategy, to put in a game plan, a lot of times you set off on a path northwest and not a path north. And so trust me, a lot of the things that we're doing here is we're making some very, very educated, I'd like to think, assumptions and insights. At the same time, you're going to pick up little nuances along the way. And I'm going to talk about that, about, when you think about really engaging SVPs at multi-billion dollar, hundreds of billion dollar companies, there is a lot of research that goes into this. And there's other things that you need to do to make sure, as you triangulate your strategy, that you have your check-in points to make sure that, again, you're heading in the right direction. One of the things that we do here, and I think you can just click it, Becca, if you want, maybe from our team, we can drop it, is step one is this roadmap. Let me just going to pull it up and just kind of show you what a good roadmap looks like, which is really just an account plan. So, again, what is it? Failure to plan is planning to fail, right? Did I get that right? Is that right, Matt? Right. Failing to plan, planning to fail. That's it. Yes. If you don't have a plan, you're going to fail, right? There's some analogy in there. So long story short,
prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. But there you go.
All right, I like that version. That's the Kiwi version, right? That's the aggressive Kiwi version. I love it. So what I do here is I really think about all the different things that go into this. And again, filling one of these out can take a few days or multiple days, etc. But again, I have how many hundreds of selling days in a year and then the next year. And again, putting together the plan can have a really, really big impact on where you end up. And when I think about the next step, the next step, the next step, thinking 4 or 5 moves ahead, because to get an executive level meeting, that's what you have to be thinking about. And again, Matt hit it on the head that you've got to be thinking ahead, not just where we're at. You've got to be thinking about where the ball is going, not just where it is today. And so by putting together an account plan, it's that forcing function to really think about and just think. So often in sales, we're so focused on the month or the quarter, but we don't take enough time to think. And a lot of best-in-class companies that we work with, Matt works with, and that we know, their enterprise and mid-market teams, that end of December when they get their account patch, or January, they're spending a week, 2 weeks, just thinking strategically about their top accounts and then having a regular sequence of events there. So again, just think about this roadmap. There's a lot of SKUs and different things in there and different things you can take a look at. Another thing to think about is as you go up the chain that, usually you're going to have these types of people. You have people who are more frontline, manager, director. Those people who care about themselves, their job, their KPIs. Maybe they start to care about their department and their goals. And then when you think about it, the company or truly the C-level, it's really across departments. And so as we go into some of these strategies, why so much messaging falls flat is it's applicable to 2 tiers below or applicable to a tier below. So if you're talking to a C-level about a departmental trend, you just told me to relegate you. If you're talking to a department head about saving time and functionality around blah, blah, blah. Now, saving time, there could be a way that you could spin it. But for the most part, if you're talking about the functionality of XYZ and how it improves efficiency, boom, that's why you get kicked down to the end user.
Jake, so, I gotta jump on that because I was taught young, and you're making a really good point. And everybody needs to remember this: you will get delegated to the level that you sound like.
That is my favorite saying.
I got it. And look, and just real quick, see a question from John Jones, which is going to lead into what you're about to say. He said, how do you start the flank or the strategy, which Jake is about to show you? What he was doing was secret shopper reports, and he didn't want to come in and tell the executives the baby's ugly, right? Good call out, because he don't want to come and say, you're doing it all wrong, because then they're going to...
Exactly.
What the hell do you know about my business? But so, 2 approaches I think about. One is, when you make the approach, it's around, hey, I have an insight about what your competition is doing or is not doing that I believe you can capitalize on, right? There's that one. Or the other one is, an industry trend or something I can see around the corner that I think you should be aware of. Now, you can then go in and tell them basically the baby's ugly, right? Without using the exact language, but coming from the side, be obtuse.
That's right. And to your point, and then, what we've made this point now, you're talking about the solution, right? Like an executive is going to take a meeting. You're going to have to paint a picture here, and you're going to have to do it very eloquently in a very short amount of time. And if you're not thinking holistically, and I'm going to show some examples here as we dive in of what I mean by that. So I want to kind of pull out here some insights and just kind of walk through some details here. So what I chose to focus on, and again, there's a lot of different angles here, right? So I want you to just think about what is Matt really talking about? Well, with their pro community, okay, what do they want to do, right? If they're losing market share, what does anybody want to do who's losing market share trying to gain it? You want to get more and you want to protect. It's not super rocket science, right? You've probably figured that part out, which is really why any product, right? And I think the best salespeople, you have to be creative in terms of how you tell this narrative and tell this story, because I have to think about there's so many, and Matt mentioned a couple, and I'm going to go deeper on some of the ones that Matt mentioned, but there's a million different ways, whether it's, someone dropped in here a question about like, if they sell a data analytics product, right? Okay, well, let's think about that, right? So I'll take that example here. Well, so this is my research. So what I did is I went to LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So if you don't have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we'll drop a link in there where you can get a free 60-day trial. To me, if you're an enterprise seller, you have to have it. It's the amount of work. It took me a few hours to do, and my gosh, if I just had Google, and it would probably take me 8 to 10 hours. So Sales Navigator, quick plug for that. So basically what I did is I went to Sales Navigator and I started to play around with different keywords around the pro category, pro marketing, pro community, pro e-com, etc., to start to then see the different names of people that start to pop up. And then I start to kind of open up my tabs, and I start to let this little long string of Home Depot directors, managers, C-levels start to just kind of trickle out. And then what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm reading, what do these people actually do? Okay, like, what do they do, right? And another thing I want to call out about LinkedIn, a big thing that I look at, and I'm going to call out Crystal here in particular. So Crystal is the Chief Customer Officer. And if you look at how she describes her role, I cut it off a little bit here. Again, starting in November of 2020, I don't know if you all remember Matt's graph. Do you remember what was happening in November of 2020? It went like this in Q2. It started to go like this, and then it started to level it out. So guess what? Crystal stepped in. And she's leading pro marketing, loyalty and credit, leadership of the insights, analytics, contact centers, 4,000 associates at the contact centers. All of these people report to Crystal, all of them. Okay. So then I see a lot of things in here. I see loyalty, etc. If you look further in Crystal's profile, guess what? She started the loyalty program. Okay. And she actually did a post 5 months ago where she tagged in all her loyalty team members. I'm so proud of the team. Boop, boop, boop. So guess what? If you sell something about loyalty, what does this tell me? This was probably Crystal's baby, right? She birthed the loyalty program, and she's proud of it. She's still talking about it. If you have anything to help with loyalty, not only do you know that she cares about this, she literally tagged in the entire team. I know exactly the 4 or 5 people that are probably the most influential, because she is a C-level, is going to tag those people because that's who she worked with. So there's so many different angles, so many that you could, depending on whatever your product is, that the same initiative can be applied to.
And Jake, this is where people can mess up, because they'll hear that and go, oh, you're right. And then they go in and they call Crystal's baby ugly. They go, we can show you how to do loyalty better, not realizing if I created this thing, you better not tell me that it's shit. Yeah. Dude,
perfect example. It's such a, beautiful, as opposed to, I know loyalty is important, and I know it because of these 3 data points. And let's talk about what the future of loyalty looks like, and how people are thinking about how incentives and loyalty has changed over post COVID or something, right? Future, how it's changed. I'm going to make you executives take meetings with people that make them smarter, period. They do not take meetings to learn about products. They take meetings to learn about solutions to strategic initiatives. And if you are not talking about solutions, if you are not leading with an education and I have a unique insight, it's just never going to happen for you. You're never going to get that VP level meeting. You're never going to get that C-level meeting ever. Okay. And as you break it down here, so I pulled out a few people. There's obviously a lot of people, and I didn't spend, I was actually going after this, I would have spent probably, I don't know, another 5 to 10 hours on this. But a couple of people I'm going to call out here. So first we've got Ashley. So we've got Ashley Payton Carter here. She currently leads all customer facing initiatives at the Home Depot's B2B e-com experience, including the homepage email campaigns, and educational components. Okay, so what is someone like Ashley going to care about? Dwell time, conversion, engagement, nurturing. What if you have an email marketing solution or an omni-channel solution? Ashley, right? Ashley is going to be the person who cares about this. Now, let's go to my man, Brendan Baby here. Okay, great name. Call him BB. So BB here, right? He's the head of customer experience strategy and analytics at the Home Depot. When I go in and look at his job title, I report to the chief customer officer. He literally told me this is his boss, right? So when you think about in her job description, when she talks about leadership of customer insights and analytics, guess who that is? That's my man, Brendan. Okay. So again, how can I start to piece this story together? The last point I'm going to make on this slide before I go forward is Andrea. Okay. What's Andrea do? Okay. Andrea is the manager of pro customer service experience and strategic projects. Well, I don't know what strategic projects means. So let's try to figure out what it means. If you go to her LinkedIn profile, she literally tells you what project it is. She says she managed a time-critical initiative to move contact center operations to a work-from-home setup. Okay, contact center operations. How many people are in that group, by the way? Oh wait, Crystal told me 4,000. Who led the initiative to move all of those people remote? Andrea. Do you think she knows Andrea? 100% chance. They work together with 4,000 of her direct reports. Okay. All right. Additionally, she developed a business strategy to restructure and improve the contact center resolutions team while separating frontline and back office activities to improve team efficiency. Streamline processes within the contact center to improve productivity and the customer experience. So think Andrea is the biz ops. She is the Swiss Army knife, right? So I already know now, and again, talking about what Matt said. So now I know another big strategic initiative that they had, which was to move to a remote environment and increase the productivity of the team. Okay, so again, don't know if I'll use that. Maybe I will, etc. So what are some areas I could focus, right? So some areas I can focus here: digital pro experience, growth and retention, e-com and in-store, obviously. And then data and getting smart on how to impact pro retention and even pro growth for that matter. But what I want to illustrate here, and if you want, we're doing a LinkedIn strategy conference where we're going to go deep. We're doing, I think April 6th is the workshop day. So April 6th, it's called Unmute, where we're talking about some like deeper LinkedIn strategies here. Becca will drop the link for it. But there's just so much information now that used to take a lot of cold calls and a lot of stuff that now I'm light years ahead. And so I'm going to go into some ideas here about, strategies and what we can do here. So we've got, again, LinkedIn strategy, Crystal and Brendan. And this is what I want to highlight real here. I think I said it very briefly. Most people on LinkedIn are lurkers, meaning they don't actually post. Instead, they like and comment. And I all the time I hear people say, well, Jake, my audience is on LinkedIn. And then I go pull them up, and sure enough, they've been liking and commenting on posts that week. And so imagine the other beautiful part. I mean, just think about this. By watching what someone likes and comments, you can start to see what they care about. You can start to see, oh, she's consistently liking and commenting this thing about these people, these types of shares, etc. So just think about that. So just because Crystal and Brendan aren't posting, they're interacting. Their posts also get very little interaction. What if you, again, use Sales Navigator, set up a saved search, filtered by lead shares every morning, and then you just get alerts. And then Brendan posts, go comment. You'll be the only non-Home Depot person that did. And you think if you do that a couple of times, I promise Brendan will remember you, right? And as long as it's insightful and it's not cheesy. Right? Andrea, right? We talked about our special project. She's not doing anything. So not a lot on LinkedIn. She's got 500 something followers, not applicable. Ashley's interacting daily. Makes sense, right? She's e-com, digital, homepage, all of the above. So let's see here. We've got some questions rolling in. I want to see if any of these are relevant. Or Matt, why don't, if you take a look at some of the questions, if there's anything that's relevant, feel free to interrupt me.
follow up, Thanos, for a second real quick. It's like, how do you get to the C-level meetings, right? Booking with them directly. I want to make 2 points. Number one is, it's not always a good idea to try and go for the top person first. Sometimes you want to build a base of support, because if you go in half-cocked, i.e. you don't have all the information, you might bounce off, you've got one shot at them. Whereas if I went down to special projects person and connected to her first, strategic projects, and learn something, then maybe she'll carry you up and have the insight. So that's one thing. However, I'm not saying you always do that. You might just go to the top because you believe you have the insight, and then you can get executive sponsorship down. Then what you do is, one of my things is, you imply through the language and names you use that you're more connected to the organization than you are. Now, I'm not trying to be deceitful here, but I'm saying, like Jake, I could use what Jake just told me and say, sorry, who's our top woman? Is it Crystal?
Crystal Zell.
Are we like, Crystal, and head of strategy is whom?
Head of analytics is Brendan Baby.
Okay, so I would write to Crystal and say, Crystal, I would like to talk to you about what Brendan's working on with respect to A, B, C, and D. I've never met Brendan, but I know what he's working on because I've seen some post, I've seen some language, whatever else. That will get her to read the email, right? And so I've used that strategy many times before, where I'll say, I want to talk to you about this initiative that Brendan's responsible for, or blah, blah, blah. And it implies that you're more connected than you are. And she's like, oh, okay. And much more likely to take a meeting. What do you think of that idea, Jake?
That's you literally, it's like you've got my slide pulled up, which is exactly that everyone rolls up to her. So I'd probably start with a few meetings with reports, or I can go direct if I have a holistic plan. Okay. I want to sit on that for a second here. Crystal, if I go in just talking about loyalty, Crystal's going to delegate me to the loyalty person. If I go in just talking about data and analytics, she's going to delegate me to BB. If I go in talking about call center effectiveness, she's going to delegate me to Andrea. That, my friends, and like Matt said, you get introduced to who you sound like. If you sound like someone who solves a departmental priority, you get introduced to departmental heads, which, hey, a departmental head at one of these companies is not a terrible place to be. But my point is, so just call out the reason I bolded this. If you want the bid meetings, the plan has to involve multiple groups. Crystal doesn't get involved unless it's touching her team. Now, if there's a theme in one of the groups, then she's going to be involved in that. But again, so I want you to think about it. If you have a data and analytics product or whatever, how can you in turn tell a story about retention to where you're not overly mentioning data, you're talking about the outcomes that you provide, to where then she now sees how it's applicable for her customer experience group, for her e-com and retention, for growth, etc. So I just want all of you to think about that a big reason why you may not be getting meetings with the levels that you'd like to get meetings at is that you don't sound like them. You sound like a department head, or you sound like an end user manager.
Jake, here's a simple thing. They can use the project management methodology, which is RACI, R-A-C-I. You've got to figure out for this initiative who's responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. And if, at Crystal's level, she might just be informed, therefore she doesn't want any of the freaking detail. And so you're speaking to the wrong person. So look it up, R-A-C-I, and that might help inform some of your strategy.
I love that. Yeah, we use a framework. It's from Bain called Rapid, which is super, super similar. Which again, it just helps you to think about, who's going to be the ultimate D decision maker, who's the recommender, who's probably the agree person, who's then the person performing, and where do they need input. So it's something that's very similar to RACI. It's probably just adapted, and obviously Bain just couldn't use something out of the box. They had to
to charge for, mate.
Can't charge for it if it's out of the box. Okay, so let's just make up some ideas. So Matt brought this one up. Matt's like, Jake, what about this e-learning idea? I'm like, all right, cool. Let's go try to sell an e-learning platform to Crystal, right? But my point is this, it doesn't matter. There's a way to make, I don't think there's a single product. And again, feel free to drop it in the chat, challenge me, right? I'm happy to try to think about this live. I don't think there's a single product that I couldn't try to tie back to one of these initiatives. Right now, it might not be important enough, so it might be more of departmental. But there's so much here around growth, time, blah, 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 all this stuff that It's pretty awesome. So let me give you an idea here of what a message might look like, right? It's about 4 sentences, right? Or as Rachel from Vidyard, she'd say, Jake, why aren't you sending a video, right? I like that idea, right? I like the idea of video. So here's how we start. I've spent the last 3 weeks talking to various members of the pro customer experience and digital leadership teams. From what I saw in the annual report, it's clear that this is going to be critical in 2020 and beyond, especially after seeing Lowe's earnings report as well. Little long, but this is the type of subject line you need to get someone to pay attention. Wait, you've been talking to my team. Okay, he actually somewhat understands what we're doing, and he actually read Lowe's earnings report. This guy's legit. He did his homework. Okay, now maybe I'll think about reading more. From the conversations and what I've read, community continues to be a big thing for the pro group, a theme for the pro group. Okay, and then now I want you to think about this. The next thing that I have to do is disarm objections. This is probably one of the most under-taught email. Actually, I feel like nobody's talking about this. That a good phone call, email, LinkedIn message, when possible, also disarms objections. So again, let's think of a concept of like, I'm Lessonly, for example, right? I have an e-learning platform, or Cornerstone's like the gorilla in that space. You know, you're like, e-learning, they're trying to retain pro. Well, that's because I need to come up with some cool ideas of how this actually fits, right? So again, when we talk to executives about the idea of an academy or school, it isn't always what pops to mind first, but the idea of an academy for the pro members to help them level up their business acumen could be a missing differentiator for growing and retaining. I wanted to see if it's okay for me to send over a few initial concepts we built to see if there may be any way to partner in 2021. Let me know if that works for you, and we'll finalize and send over details Thursday. Okay. Why didn't I ask for the meeting here? Okay. Well, a couple of things. So like I said, if I'm going for someone at a big enough company like a Home Depot, I'm 100% taking Matt's strategy, what Matt talked about. There's a very low likelihood I'm going to go straight for Crystal. Again, if I feel like I can do it, maybe in 20% of cases, then I would. So you'll see here, again, I'm highlighting, I've done my work. I deserve a seat at the table. I know how to talk executives. I already am reading your mind, and you know, I'm not going to let you disqualify me for some normal BS. And my ask is, I want to make you smarter. I want to send you over some concepts, right? And guess what? That's all I need to get a yes. If I get a yes from that, game over, right? So what's more important? Gong, actually, I don't know if any of you have seen this. I know we've got some Gong reps on the line too. Gong did a study where they talked about the top converting call to action last year was actually, is it okay if I send you some details versus, you know, does 3:30 at Thursday work? And so just think about that as a part of that. Sorry, another option, marketplace for other contractors. So again, I spoke to your EA and she suggested I forward over a few details before setting up time to connect. Okay, this guy. So let me tell you what I did. I Googled Home Depot corporate office. I called Home Depot's corporate office, and guess what? They have a dial by name directory. Oh my God. So for all you people complaining, I'm staring right at you. I don't have direct dials. How can I call people? Come on, dude. Pick up the phone and learn how to bounce a phone tree. Okay? That's how we used to do it, Matt, right? Back in the day.
Got it, brother. You
bounce that phone tree, man. I used to be the champ. So that real quick. Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta tell you a ninja trick. So if you actually speak, if you want to get to someone, what you do is you pick anyone and you pick this one. You find accounts receivable. Accounts receivable always answers the phone because they want bills paid. You get to them and you go, "Oh, I'm sorry, who's that?" Johnny Stevens. "Oh, Johnny Stevens, I was looking for Crystal. I was put through to you. Would you mind transferring me?" "Sure." Boom. Accounts receivable always answers the phone.
Oh my God, I love it. And then guess what? My opening line, hey, I talked to a few people at Home Depot. They suggested that you're the right person for me to connect with, or some version of that. So anyway, I want to make sure we've got a bunch of questions kind of piling in here. So again, highlighting the idea of the marketplace to help them connect and grow their local businesses. ooh, that's a good idea, Jake. That's all I need, Crystal. That's all I need her to do. That is my goal here. My goal is for her to go, okay, that's interesting. That's all that and so think about that. When you're reaching out to executives, that is the goal. The goal usually isn't to get the meeting at first. I need them to think that I have a unique idea, a unique value prop. It's like the old Wolf of Wall Street. You know, if you've heard that, where he's like, I've got a winning idea that's blah, blah, blah. It's a much different, more sophisticated, but the human psyche is similar to that, which is, you know, people want to be educated. They want novel, new ideas. They're tired of hearing the same data and analytics and blah, blah, blah. You know, be smart, people, you know? So HD supply, and then let's do some Q&A. I'm just going to talk about this quickly. So again, another area of focus here, right? So HD supply, here's Shane O'Kelly. Shane is the SVP / at Home Depot, but CEO at HD Supply. Nathan used to work with him at HD Supply. Well, when it was just by itself. Rebecca is now in charge of marketing at HD Supply. So I might run a play here called the Are You Ready play, right? Are you ready for back to market? Are you ready for people to be back in office? I'm based in Austin. Texas just opened up. We're expecting buildings to go from 10 to 30% capacity. Is your go-to-market team ready for what's about to happen? And here's maybe 2 areas that you haven't thought about. So again, I want you to think about that. So again, maybe this is where I use a video. Maybe I send Shane a video. I'm actually a big fan of doing a video as the second touch point, where it's like I send you something that's really good, and then the video maybe gets you to actually go look at the first email. Because you know what everyone does with your first email? Just, I really hate to break this to you. They hit archive. They hit archive. Your first email, almost always archive, right? Like, okay, let's see. That's interesting, right? So I know that my job is to kind of refresh that. So again, why would I think about this play? Matt hit it on the head. In their earnings report, they talk about HD Supply. They think it's going to be a growth part of this year because people are going back to office, right? If I sell anything, so what do you think their whole executive team is talking about? Are we ready? Do we have a plan? Nathan, you're the online content for Pro Experience. Again, he also works at HD Supply. Nathan, are we ready? Are we marketing? Are we getting them excited? Are we nurturing them? Hey, sales team, you know, hey, like, let's say I sold something like outreach, right? Hey, do we have a nurturing plan in place? How are you going to stay in front of those people so when their buildings open up, their customers open up, you are ready? Guess what? A sequencing tool can help you with that, right? So I think we got some sales law folks. Take it away, right? So my point is, you got to be smart about this, right? So with HD Supply, this is a whole nother angle. That's why that account strategy document's so long, okay? Like this is a whole nother play, completely different. And so, but again, I did all this research in just a few hours. Once I had the insights, I then say, what are these executives thinking about? What is happening? Again, to Matt said, I'm thinking about the future. What are they thinking about in 2022? You know, what are they thinking about in 2023? Most of these, if you're a C-level, for a lot of these, Shane is he's getting ready because this is a very odd time. But usually someone like Shane, by the time April hits, Shane's already thinking about 2022. Because 2021 is already baked. Now, because 2021 is going to be a really funky year for some stuff, he's probably more focused in the now. So just some things for you all to think about. Matt, I do want you to maybe talk a little bit about this, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. We'll see what we can get through. You can hit up Matt and I on LinkedIn too, just as an FYI. So you can hit us up with Q&A. We're not going to have time to get to all of them because we wanted to drop as much knowledge as possible. I got all excited. But Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about your program you've got coming up?
30 seconds. So this is for you folks that have to write bespoke proposals. So be it unsolicited, which is what we're doing here, which is we're creating something from nothing. Or if you're responding to an RFP, we're going to help people write far more impactful proposals based on the sort of insights we did today. So how you research the account, and then if you're responding to an RFP and you feel like you've been stuck in a box and you have to respond and you're at the same level as everybody else, we'll show you how to use language, imagery, and tactics within an RFP format to outflank the competition. So check it out. I dropped a link in there for you. It's coming up in June, I think. So that'll be some fun.
There we go. And we'll drop it in there. So go check this out. build on everything we've talked about on how to put together the plan, the proposal, right? I think it's a massive, massive gap. And hopefully Matt will agree, and why you should never email an executive proposal. You should actually walk someone through it, which is a horrible thing. Please do not just email it. Another thing, so I mentioned before, 2 quick things for us. The Unmute conference coming up April 6th and 7th. If you are a sales or marketing leader who's trying to figure out how to empower your teams to get them more active and do things on LinkedIn, you should attend. If you're an individual who's trying to understand how to have influence in your market, then you should attend. Day 1 is like going to be a very immersive workshop, super hands-on, more front lines. Day 2, we've got 2 tracks, empower and influence, one for leaders who are trying to empower, and one for people that are trying to grow their own influence. And we're not talking about like being an influencer. We're talking about being a digital expert in your industry, right? Also, quick, fun little leave behind. We do a kind of a talk about navigating the complex deals. So some of the things I talked about how to, develop different messages and separate solution people are in this deck. So you can just download it, have a day. It'll be amazing for you. So check out the conference, check out Matt's event, and download that. Matt, any questions in here jumped out to you? Any questions in the Q&A that we want to, I think let's try to take a couple, and then the rest of you, look, lots of love, DM Matt or I, we are more than happy to answer and help you. So I would be more than happy to hop in and do it.
Someone asked the questions about the balance of too much over-personalization in these sorts of things. Hey, we're selling to enterprise. There's no such thing as too much. Like, you have to be on point, like deeply researched. And here's my test for you. Here's a challenge for everyone listening. If I could receive the email from you and believe it could have been written for anybody else, you failed.
Boom.
That's it.
Boom. So easy, right? All right, there's another one I saw in here. Let's see. Nuances to set up C-levels versus director. Okay, I'll take this one. Can you talk more about the nuances you use to set up C-level meetings versus director? So I think, look, for the most part, what I think about is if I'm going to really try to get, like, I'm talking like a true C-level here, not like a C-level of like a 100-person company, right? I am most likely going to try to talk to the directors first. So I might reach out at the director level with something I know that solves a pain for them to say, hey, and again, like the Andrea one, if you saw it, I had an example. Hey, Andrea, I know you were focused on efficiency last year. This year, looking at the annual report, you probably are starting to think about maybe more of like retention or growth. I have a few concepts or ideas. Let's set up time to talk. Then I talk to Andrea. Then I might take that information and go straight to like maybe Brendan or somebody else. But again, to me, that's how I think about that. Jacqueline says she's rethinking her whole approach to customization based on the knowledge that you dropped there. So look, everyone, we're at time. Sorry, we got carried away. I knew we would. But this is great. This is really, really great. We had a few hundred people show up. I hope you all got a ridiculous amount of value. Matt and I are out here making it happen. For you, we're going to be doing this once a quarter. If you have a submission, if you're like, Jake, please do this one, or Matt, please do this one, feel free to hit it up. Matt McComb is very impressed by how helpful this was. Well, Matt, I'm glad we didn't disappoint, right? I'm glad that we lived up to your expectations. And look, this is something that takes time. But again, it's just a little bit of logic and creativity, which I think sometimes in sales we forget is a big important part of sales is creativity. So, again, go check out Matt's event, please, in June. Everybody probably needs to attend. You can always get better at doing this. And again, check out the Unmute conference coming up in April. We've got the links in there. And feel free to download the complex deal. It is in the chat. So thanks again, everyone. Matt, thank you. Appreciate it.
See you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.